All right, welcome back. So now we have moved over to our machine because we have our cut lengths that we have identified. All right, so we've selected a piece of pipe that is going to do the whole project. All right, so one of the main things you want to look for when you go to get a section of pipe is you don't always want to grab the full length of pipe. We have things that we call drops where somebody has already cut off some portion of that pipe and it's left over. Your employer will want you to definitely use up those drops, okay? That's calculated in. So we found a stick of pipe that is 72 inches long, which is more than enough because our overall was 42. Our travel was approximately 6 to 8 inches, so we needed 50 inch roughly, you know, without doing the math. And I went and found a piece that is 72 inches long, so that way we can use up as much of pipe and have less waste, all right? So first thing I want to do is I want to start with a straight edge on my pipe, okay? So with this machine, this is the rigid 535. In another video, we will actually go over the function of the machine. So right now, what I got is I have my cutter. I'm going to bring my cutter down into place, okay? And I'm just going to take off about a ½ inch or so on the pipe. That'll give me a straight, clean edge to take my measurements from, okay? So go ahead and step on the pedal and we're going to go ahead and make our cut. All right, so we've made our cut, and you can see it does leave a little bit of a lip inside because the cutter does not actually cut, it displaces the metal and pushes it through. And so I'm gonna bring the reamer in, and we're just gonna clean that lip out of there because you don't wanna have a lip inside there because that gives you a disruption in the flow of the liquid that goes through the pipe. So you always wanna clean out. It's gonna put a little bit of a bevel on the inside, so that way once we make our assembly, whatever liquid is gonna travel through here will travel smoothly. You can consider that like a road bump, and as water or fuel or anything transfers through there, if it hits that little road bump in there, then it could cause what we call a hammer knock, all right? Because it's a disruption of the flow. So we're gonna go ahead and ream that out. All right. You can see it don't take much to do that. All right, I'm gonna get my little, all right, so now you can see there's a nice little bevel inside there. We take the lip out of there, so now any water that flows through will have an unobstructed flow, and then we won't get what we call the hammer knock, okay? All right, so now we're ready to go ahead and thread one in. Instead of cutting it to length, I wanna go ahead and put the threads on now. That minimizes the amount of time that I gotta take the pipe in and out of the machine. All right, so I know I gotta have one end threaded, so I'm just gonna go ahead and thread that in. Then we'll slide it out, we'll measure to our A, and we'll cut it at that length. Then we'll move on. All right, so I bring my die into place. I'm gonna look here and make my adjustment. This die will do several different size pipes, so we're doing 2-inch pipe today. So I got it set on my 2, and everything with this machine is when I wanna do it, I pull the lever to me, and what I'm gonna look for is once it starts threading, the number 1 die right here, when the pipe gets to the end of the number 1 die, I'll lift this up and stop threading because that gives me a calculated depth of pipe. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. Always make sure you have oil flow. If you don't have oil flow, you need to stop, work on the machine, figure out why, because you do not want to thread without oil. All right, so you can see we have oil flow. I'm gonna engage my dies. I'm gonna bring it up, and I'm gonna get it to start threading. Then I can let it go, because as it threads, it'll self-feed. So now what I'm watching for is that it's making good, clean threads, and that once I get to the end of my die, I will lift this up and stop threading, and that'll give me the depth of thread that I need. Again, with any rotating equipment, you don't want any loose clothing, any jewelry hanging over. All right, so now we have our thread done. I can take my foot off the pedal. I can slide this out of the way and lift this up and take a look at my threads.
Also, he said he's going to the edge of his die. Please note that this is 10 threads per square inch. This die is 1 inch. So there are 10 threads on this die. Him coming to the end of the die will give us 10 threads, which is going to be critical in our fit up because we need 3 to 5 threads outside of the pipe, 3 to 5 threads inside of the pipe for acceptance criteria. So by cutting a full length of die, putting 10 threads, that should give him, if the diameter of the diameter of the cut were perfect, he would have 5 threads outside and 5 threads inside the diameter. Of course, it takes a little finagling. It's not an exact science. You have to test fit with your fitting.
Right. So now that I have my initial set of threads on there, I'm going to take my fitting and I'm going to check it. Okay. So your fitting should go ahead and thread on. Sometimes it's going to be difficult depending on how the threads are and how your cut was. All right. So we'll get her started. All right. So now that I got it engaged, what I'm looking for is I want to turn this and I want to have 3 to 5 full turns by hand. Okay, because the unwritten formula is 3 to 5 turns by hand. Once I take it out and use my pipe wrench, I want to get 1 to 2 turns with a pipe wrench. Once that's done, then I should have 2 to 3 threads showing. Okay, that's our kind of a standard of how we want to get this to fit up. These threads are what we call tapered threads. So as the machine is threading it, your back threads are shallower than your front threads. So as you screw that fitting on there, it tightens up on itself. All right, so if you can't get 3 to 5, then you have to make an adjustment because these teeth will wear down depending on how many threads you've been doing and how long these dies have been in the machine. So if I can't get 3 to 5, I'm going to back this off. I'm going to readjust my machine. I'm going to run it down the threads again. Then that should deepen my threads and I should be able to get my 3 to 5 turn. All right, so right now you can see it's pretty tight and we only got 1 turn out of it. All right, so that's an indication that my threads dies here are wearing down. So a good rule is that, so now we'll just take this and we'll make a slight adjustment where we just move it up about 1/4 of an inch. And you can, so you don't want to go and try to take a big chunk because what's going to happen is the pipe's going to spin inside and it's not going to lock down. This only holds so much. Okay, it's a hammer lock and it grips it. But if you're trying to take a big chunk of metal out of there, then it's going to just spin in there and lock it up and you won't be able to do it. So we make a slight adjustment because I want the front of my threads to be a little bit deeper and we just simply run it down again. Now once it gets about halfway across the dies, you'll hear the machine bog down. It's starting to cut them a little deeper, so you hear it right there. Again, I'm going to wait till I get to the end of the die. I'm going to lift this lever up, let that clean off, move it out of my way. All right, I'm going to clean my threads off a little bit. You don't want to get no chips in there. All right. Okay, so now that I have the threads done on my pipe, I can go ahead and cut this one to length. So the first length of our A pipe, and we go back to our cut length, is going to be 10 5/8. All right. So what that means is from my cutter, I'm going to bring my cutter into place. Okay. So I can get a measurement. You can see inside the cutting wheel right there. So I want to measure from my cutting wheel.
All right. Bring the pipe out, sir.
The pipe, and I'm going to set it at 10 5/8. All right. So right there we are at 10 5/8. I'm going to go ahead and lock the pipe into place. And now I'm ready to just make my cut like we did when we made our first initial cut to square off the end. All right, so here we go. All right, so our cut's made, put our tool out of the way, and now we have a piece that is threaded on one end, which represents our A pipe, okay? And the reason we don't have to thread this end is because this is the end that goes inside of the flange, and that's not a threaded flange, so we don't have to thread this, okay? So you want to kind of sit here, you're going to get oily, so I would recommend gloves or have just some shop rags standing by. You don't want to drop oil all over your shop floor or wherever. So I just kind of clean the oil out a little bit, and Mr. Bryan will go ahead and set that aside for us. All right, so now that we have this pipe in there, we've already made our cut, we got to do our next one. So I go right to the C, because the C, again, only has one side threaded. So I can go ahead and clean the end of this off, because I've already got a straight edge from when I did the cut for the A. I'm going to go ahead and clean the inside with the reamer. Take that, slide it out of the way, get the chips out because I don't want to get the chips inside of my threading dies. All right, so now I'm ready to go ahead and put a set of threads on this pipe. Same process. We start out on the number 2 because we're using 2-inch pipe. Engage, make sure, check we got oil flow, bring it in, and go ahead and get it started. And we'll go ahead and make our first cut. Now, since we know that on the number 2, that it didn't cut the threads deep enough, I don't have to screw a fitting on there. I can just go back to my adjustment, make my second cut, and then we'll be good to go. All right, so we reached the end of our die. Go ahead and slide it out of the way. And like I said, I already did this with the first one, and I know that I have to make a little fine adjustment to make my threads a little bit deeper. All right, so we got that. I'm gonna go ahead and get the chips out of the way, keep our teeth clean. If not, because once you do this, and if there's a chip in there, it could damage the threads that you just put on there, and then it's just kind of a waste. You have to cut that off and rethread it again, okay? Because there's no way to save it once you've damaged the threads, all right? So we'll go ahead and get our, make sure oil check, bring it in, let it start threading again. All right, so there we go. We have another one here. I kind of like to clean the oil off a little bit. Okay, one thing to keep in mind is that these threads are like razor blades now. So what you don't want to, while this is spinning, don't bare hand try to clean off your threads. Always have like some cut-proof gloves on, or maybe a wire brush. In this case, I just use a rag and I just kind of hold it on there to clean it off. But these threads now are like little razor blades, and they will give you a nice little nick. All right, so now that we have that one done, we can go ahead and cut it to length, just like we did our other pipe. So we'll go ahead and loosen up our lock. Mr. Bryan will slide it through a little bit. I'll bring the cutter into place so that he can pull a measurement. And the measurement that we're pulling from is from the cutter itself, okay? So we want to be at 10 5/8. And we'll get this adjusted.
You can also adjust it by moving the hand. It'll move this. This can be moved left to right, but if it's all the way extended out, you're gonna have to pull it in.
Right. So there's a measurement on the side. We'll go over that when we go over the machine, but it's only an 8-inch thing. So if you're making something that's longer than 8 inches, then you just got to go to the old tape measure routine. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get her locked in. All right, you can hear that hammer lock. I want to make sure it's in there tight. All right, now I'm just ready to cut this one off, and then we just made an identical piece to our A. So the A pipe is done. This is our C pipe. All right, so our cut was made. We want to go ahead and hold that, let that get a set her aside. We should have 2 identical pieces now. All right, so now A and C is complete, and we want to do B. And the reason I did B last is because on the B pipe, both ends need to be threaded, okay? Because you have 2 fittings that go right here on the 45, so both ends of those have to be threaded. So I saved the double threading for the last one because it was easier, just more productive to knock those short ones out with 1 threaded side. Quick and simple. So now again, we have a straight edge. We have that lip inside because we just cut it. So we're going to take our reamer again. We're going to prep the inside. All right. Take that up out of our way. Go ahead and get the chips off. Make sure we're locked into place, and we're going to drop our threader in. Reset to number 2 for our 2-inch pipe, and we'll go ahead and run another pass down there. while you're doing your threading, you want to look at the curly Q cuts that are coming off. That's going to indicate whether your teeth are getting dull or not, okay? You should have a continuous flow. All right, I'm going to reach in here and grab one. You can see that you should have a continuous a coil of pipe coming off that the threads cut, okay? So now that we have that, we got to make our adjustment because we already know that our teeth are a little worn. So that's going to have us make a little small adjustment. We're going to run it down again. Again, using the rag and not my hand. I'm just going to try to take those off. All right, so now we got our B pipe measurement of 24. We're just going to simply loosen everything up. We'll slide our pipe through, bring our cutter back into place. And Mr. Bryan will measure from the cut wheel to the end of the pipe. And we got...
Keep going, pull back.
All right. All right, so we're set at 24. That means I can go ahead and slide this out of my way, lock my pipe down. All right, so now we're gonna make this cut, and we know we gotta thread this side of the pipe. So once we make this cut, we'll go ahead and take the scrap piece of pipe out. We'll flip this around, insert our pipe back in, and we'll thread the other end. That way we'll have our B piece that have threads on both ends. All right, so let's go ahead and make our cut.
On these longer pieces of pipe, you want to make sure that you support them, because if they were to fall and land on your threads are no longer good. You can ding up your threads, now your fitting won't thread. Now you have to fix your threads or repeat the process.
All right, so Mr. Bryan made a good point about that. So a lot of times you'll be doing this by yourself. This really doesn't require a two-man operation, but always protect your thread ends, okay? Because once you damage it, then you got to cut it off and you got to redo it. Well, now that we cut this to 24 inches, if we damage our threads and cut it off, then this 24 inches pipe is no longer no good. We got to go find ourselves another piece and redo the process all over, okay? So we just simply slide the threaded end in, get our pipe set to where we can put threads on it, lock her back down, give a good 2 to 3 good wraps to lock her in. All right, and then remember, we just made that cut. So again, we have that lip inside. So anytime we make a cut with our cutter, we're gonna use our reamer. We're gonna take that out. All right, doesn't take much pressure, just enough to go ahead and make a little cut inside there. All right, get our chips off, get a look in there, say, yep. All right, so our lip is off, and then we're just gonna thread here. So again, we're gonna go ahead and set it at 2. And then we'll start making our threads. And again, I already know that I have to make that slight adjustment, so I moved it back to our spot, and we'll just go ahead and run that down there one more time. Again, we're just going to go ahead and Clean our threads off. Try to take a little bit of excess oil off of there so we're not taking it and dripping it all over. All right, so once she comes to a stop, we'll go ahead and unhammer lock it there, and slide it out. And I like to sometimes just, you can see that the oil is dripping out of it. Okay, if you take that all over, you're gonna drip oil all over your shop. So sometimes I just like to let it sit in that tray because the oil goes through the tray and gets recycled back through the machine again, okay? There's a screen right in here that catches all your shavings, but underneath there is the oil reservoir. So we like to return the oil where we got it from and not take it all over to the shop and drip it around. All right, so there's our B pipe. You can see threaded both ends, all right? So our A and C threaded one end, our B pipe threaded both ends, and now at this point, we are ready to go to assembly.
Thank you for watching our video today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something today. If you would like to get some more tips and tricks and become a better welder, then subscribe to our channel. And if you would like to learn even more right now, then click on our link. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.